Yesterday, astounding testimony, to say the least, from Dikeledi Makadzi, the former chairperson of the Transport Portfolio Committee. I want to start there.
Yes.
As much as the information that was coming from her about what her committee did and did not do, as alarming as it was, but she was lauded by the commission chairperson for being honest, at least.
Yes, lauded for being honest and being forthcoming, because when she was being quizzed on what was more important in terms of her duty as a committee member, the oversight role, she basically put it directly and without any contradiction, to say that her understanding was that as members of the ruling party, despite, of course, what was expected of them in terms of their oversight capacity, they could not go against the directive of the ruling party. By that, she also meant that they would not necessarily go and move and basically sanction the ruling party, because they were voted by the ruling party, or on the ticket of the ruling party, and they were in parliament, she says, because of the ruling party.
But in parliament, there are representatives of the people of South Africa.
Absolutely. And when that was put to her, she said that basically her understanding was that there was no ways that as, members of the ruling party who were there because of the ruling party, they would move against the ruling party. And Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, although he did not agree with Ms. Makadzi, basically was saying that he appreciated that frankness, because she didn't seem to come there to try and cover things up and, try to sidestep any of the blame. In fact, on many occasions where things were pointed out where the Oversight Committee should have intervened, when you look at the contracts that were issued out to Gupta-linked entities, the 50 billion rand, contract that was issued out for the locomotives and so forth. And this was flagged at Parliament, and many opposition parties and many other organizations did make recommendations and did come to Parliament and say, wait, there's a problem here, or even media reports. She says, yes, we were aware of these. However, we took a decision based on what it is we understood.
To do nothing.
To do nothing.
I guess that was the most shocking, that when it came to light that there are certain the Guptas,
yes,
I think as the reports went at the time, the Guptas who were demanding that their associates sit on certain boards of these state-owned entities, that's where the commission chairperson Raymond Zondo was really exasperated to say, what did you do? Did you not feel it necessary to question who are these people who are making such demands, and let's dig deeper?
Absolutely, Chloe. And also, apart from digging deeper, the question is, without looking at the outside noise, so to speak, and the people blowing the whistle and the people demanding accountability, they had reports, in-house reports that basically detailed how these payments to the Gupta-linked companies in a state-owned entity over a short space of time ballooned exponentially. And this is something that even themselves in their operational capacity should have looked at and said, wait, there's something untoward around here. You can't have payments ballooning from 100 million, several hundred million in the next financial year. In the next financial year, all of a sudden, we're looking at billions, and there's nothing to say where the money is going for and no value add. And when you receive that back, you're saying that things should go ahead as usual. You're not calling the particular board of the entities to say account. You're not necessarily calling the minister who is in charge of the entity to say, but minister, there should be a problem that you need to be aware of here. And what she said was very interesting, to say that all they could do was not call the various, whether it's SOE CEOs or boards or even the minister, to hold them to account. All they had to do was to basically provide an advisory role, which it seems that when you look back at the facts of the matter, they failed to do.
Well, today at least we have an understanding of why, when misspending, especially around PRASA, ballooned to billions of rand, we understand who the Oversight Committee chairperson was and why nothing was done to correct that situation. Let's move on to Vincent Smith. Let's have a look at his testimony versus that of Dikeledi Magadzi, who was lauded for being honest. How was the performance of Vincent Smith? Was he any honest?
Well, Vincent Smith was forthcoming, but what I found interesting about his testimony, as well as open as he was, because he was transparent, he was engaging with the evidence leader, but he was also, in many respects, pushing back when he felt that he had to explain certain things. So one got the impression that he felt he had to explain why things happened and why things took a turn and why he failed essentially in that oversight capacity. And he was stressing in his defense, saying that, when it comes to it, Parliament's oversight role is hamstrung by the fact that these committees don't have the resources and they simply don't have the manpower to deal with the amount of reports, the amount of work that they simply have to do. Yeah. And they are certainly seen as almost like a sidebar that is there in Parliament to complete the picture of Parliament, and yet they are not resourced enough adequately. And this was in direct response to a challenge by Deputy Chief Justice when he was trying to explain and justify why certain things weren't done and why oversight was not effectively seen through, saying that it all comes down to resources. Had we been better capacitated, we would have certainly done a better job. Yeah. Which Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo certainly did not seem to accept as an explanation, because he said you should have done better. You are capacitated, despite the lack of resources that you have in Parliament. You do have legislative frameworks, and you do have the expectation from the electorate, the people who sent you there, that you will put their best interest at heart and the country's best interest at heart.
What about questions of possible or alleged leniency from the part of Vincent Smith, who chaired the Portfolio Committee on Correctional Services, in particular around one company, Bosasa?
Well, Smith's response to that was very interesting, Koli. You would know that he is currently facing the long arm of the law. He's before the courts, along with Bosasa Angelo Agrithi in the dock for irregular payments that were made, and to face those allegations of graft. And it was very interesting in how he handled it, because he seemed to suggest that these dealings with Bosasa sort of preceded his time, and in what was happening in his oversight capacity, there was nothing untoward, because the contract was not necessarily that he dealt with about the overall, I think it runs into the billions, the deals that were done. But, the evidence leader made it clear that despite this, when you did come in, even if the deals that were signed preceded your time, your responsibility was to call the flag, to raise the flag, to say this is undue. And in fact, in the time that you were there, these deals seemed to be signed off without going to tender, and the amounts seemed to increase. Why then didn't you push back? And he simply then hid behind the fact that Parliament's Oversight Committee, despite raising this, and despite the SIU even flagging what was happening with Bosasa, saying that we were aware of these reports, but we couldn't lean on the executive. We tried to raise it in committee meetings, and we performed our roles as an advisory body of Parliament to say to the executive, you need to look into this, there's something untoward. So he basically said that they did their job, and they did it to the best of the capability, and his dealings with Bosasa didn't affect that, because he was part of those who tried to flag the executive. Whether they did so effectively, well, only history will tell, because when you look back, these deals still continued even after the SIU report into Bosasa.
Tumaole Mohlaoli, thank you very much for at least taking us back and giving us the highlights of what came out yesterday. Well, I'll tell you that today the State Capture Commission of Inquiry is actually going to start a little earlier. We're told it's going to be 9:30, and that's when Professor Richard Calland, a professor knowledgeable in the field of public law, is going to be called to the stand.